Picture a dining room table in France. On one end, you have this rich aromatic lamb tagine sitting in beautifully glazed Moroccan clay.
Oh, yeah.
And right next to it, perfectly aligned, is polished European silverware and a half-empty bottle of Bordeaux wine.
It's a very vivid image.
Right. It's not some restaurant trying to do fusion cuisine for a trendy crowd. It's a snapshot of someone's actual everyday life.
Exactly. I mean, it perfectly encapsulates the kind of friction we are looking at today. When you see those items sitting together, you are looking at a physical manifestation of a psychological negotiation.
Which brings us to our focus for this deep dive. We are exploring a truly fascinating academic paper published in 2026.
Yeah, from the Confluence Journal of Multidisciplinary Studies.
That's the one. It was written by Tahar El-Feli, and it's titled Multiculturalism and Postsecular Feminism: Reframing Moroccan Female Global Identity in Tahar Ben Jelloun's Fiction.
I know, it is quite a heavy title.
It really is.
But the core of what El-Feli is doing is just incredibly compelling. She is looking at the Moroccan diaspora, specifically through the lens of literature, to understand how people survive the collision of, seemingly incompatible worlds.
So our mission today is to explore exactly how Moroccan women living abroad navigate this massive tension between their traditional roots and their modern Western lives.
Right.
Have you ever felt forced to choose between two different versions of yourself, like the work version and the home version?
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine that pressure magnified across international borders, cultures, and religions. We want to look at how these characters actually use this tension, not as something that defeats them, but as a mechanism to empower themselves.
It's a massive shift in perspective.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have a dense academic text in front of us, and you're here to help synthesize this. Before we get into the psychology of how these women are shifting their identities, I want to trace this back to the root cause.
Yeah, we definitely need the historical context.
El-Feli grounds this literary analysis in some very real, very turbulent recent history.
She does, because you just can't understand the modern Moroccan diaspora in a vacuum. I mean,
Yeah.
El-Feli points to several major global events that acted as absolute catalysts for the psychological shifts we're going to discuss.
Right.
The most prominent one she starts with is the aftermath of 9/11.
The paper spends a considerable amount of time unpacking the ripple effects there.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense. I mean, 9/11 pushed the conversation out of the shadows and onto the front page.
Exactly.
It fundamentally altered Moroccan-American and Moroccan-European relations.
It heightened the visibility of Islam in the West almost overnight. And El-Feli carefully notes that this sudden visibility unfortunately sparked a massive wave of what academics call Orientalist stereotyping.
Let's define that for a second, just so we're all on the same page. That's essentially the Western habit of flattening out incredibly complex Eastern cultures into a monolithic, often dangerous or exoticized other. Right.
That's a perfect summary, yeah. The West started viewing the East through this highly generalized, suspicion-tinted lens.
Wow.
But El-Feli points out a paradox here. While that stereotyping caused immense harm and Islamophobia, the sheer proximity and visibility of these communities also forced a new era of interfaith dialogue.
Interesting.
It made discussions about transnational identity, the reality of mentally and physically living across borders simultaneously, completely unavoidable in the public sphere.
It's that classic idea that proximity breeds necessity.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just geopolitics forcing this dialogue, right? El-Feli also dives heavily into the economic and political upheavals.
Oh, absolutely. The events driving migration in the first place, we have to look at the Arab Spring.
Right, specifically its manifestation in Morocco through the 20th February movement.
Exactly. This was a massive grassroots push for social, economic, and political reform.
And when you combine that intense domestic political frustration with the global financial crisis.
And later, the European migration crisis of 2015 and 2016.
Right. The result is millions of people crossing into Europe, many simply seeking economic survival.
Yeah.
It sounds like these global events act as a massive pressure cooker. Under that kind of heat, an identity either shatters or it adapts into something entirely new and unbreakable.
That's a great way to put it.
So to understand how that pressure cooker shapes human identity, El-Feli focuses her analysis on the novels of Tahar Ben Jelloun, specifically Leaving Tangier, A Place in the Old Village, and The Happy Marriage.
Yes, those three works are central to her argument.
But what I find intriguing, and I'd love your take on this, is that Ben Jelloun is a prominent male author.
Right.
My initial thought is, if we want to study Moroccan female empowerment, why not focus on a female author? Why are his female characters the perfect lens for viewing this pressure cooker effect?
It's an incredibly sharp question. In a lot of traditional Moroccan diaspora literature written by men, the female experience is marginalized.
I can imagine.
Women are often portrayed as passive victims of circumstance, or, just symbolic, silent anchors of the homeland.
Just background characters, basically.
Exactly. But Jelloun does something radical, which El-Feli highlights. He hands the narrative agency over to the women.
Oh, wow.
His female characters are the ones subverting patriarchy. They're the ones reconceptualizing what it means to be traditional versus modern.
So they aren't just reacting to the geopolitical pressure. They are actively navigating it.
And in doing so, they achieve a recognizable enablement that challenges a lot of the existing academic literature on the subject. They become the active authors of their own survival.
That is fascinating.
Yep.
Let's pull this down from the macro level of global politics to the micro level of that dining room table we started with.
Let's do it.
Because that table is where El-Feli's concept of cultural hybridity really comes alive.
Yes, cultural hybridity is the paper's counter-argument to the old, tired binary of immigration.
The idea that you have to choose one or the other.
Right. The traditional view assumes that when you move to Europe, you either assimilate completely, essentially erasing your past, or you isolate yourself in a cultural ghetto to preserve your roots.
And El-Feli argues they don't do either.
Exactly. She argues these characters construct a third space.
Let's look at how that actually functions psychologically, using the character Amina from The Happy Marriage.
Amina's such a great example.
Her backstory alone is a tapestry. She is of Arab-Berber origin, but she was raised by a French family. So she doesn't even start with a quote-unquote pure identity.
Right, and she is the perfect embodiment of this third space because she refuses to apologize for her contradictions.
How so?
Well, she embraces the liberalism of France, she goes to parties, she drinks wine with her meals, she lives a very modern lifestyle.
Yeah.
But she doesn't view this as a betrayal of her Berber history. In fact, she leverages her European access to spend a year promoting a troupe of Berber musicians across Europe.
To raise money for her native village back in Morocco.
Yes.
A place she actually calls Bled El Fana, the village of nothingness.
Which is such a powerful detail.
It really struck me because it shows she hasn't romanticized her homeland. She acknowledges the poverty and the nothingness, but she uses her European agency to build a school there.
Exactly. She is taking the capital of the West and funneling it directly into the preservation and elevation of her roots.
Okay, but let me issue a gentle pushback on this idea of the third space.
Sure, go ahead.
When I read about the character Kenza in Leaving Tangier, I see something a little different. Kenza is desperate.
She is.
She marries an older Spanish man, Miguel, primarily just to get her citizenship and cross the border legally. She cooks traditional tagines and celebrates Eid, but she also sits down and shares a glass of wine with her Spanish husband.
Right.
Wait, isn't this just assimilation with extra steps? If they're drinking wine and adopting European habits, are they really maintaining their Moroccan identity or just watering it down to fit in?
That raises a really important question, and it's one of the main criticisms traditionalists level at the diaspora.
I'm sure it is.
The assumption is that cultural identity is a pie chart. Like, if you add 10% Spanish culture, you must be subtracting 10% Moroccan culture.
A zero-sum game.
Exactly. But El-Feli's analysis completely rejects the pie chart model. The paper specifically defines this not as a loss, but as a dynamic, empowering synthesis.
So for Kenza, sharing that wine isn't a submission, it's a negotiation.
Yes. She is expanding her toolkit, not replacing her old tools.
I love that. Expanding the toolkit.
And if you look at the older Moroccan couple in the novel, A Place in the Old Village, their story explores the deep psychological cost of this transition.
Yeah, they go through a lot.
They actually lose their children to secular European influence. The parents are heartbroken, calling their kids ingrates without roots, without religion.
If we follow the traditional narrative, that kind of heartbreak should push the parents into extreme isolation.
Right, they should lock the doors and become hyper-traditional.
Just to protect whatever's left of their culture.
But they do the exact opposite. To maintain family unity with their Europeanized kids, this devout Muslim couple starts celebrating New Year's Eve like good Christians.
Wait, really? That has to cause massive internal cognitive dissonance for them.
It requires a profound psychological leap. But they concurrently maintain their strict fasting for Ramadan.
Wow.
The juxtaposition of these two cultural realities doesn't lead to a contradiction that breaks their minds. It's a deliberate amalgamation. They decide that family unity is the ultimate goal.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Mixing food, celebrating new holidays, listening to different music, that's the cultural realm.
Yeah.
But what happens when foundational belief systems collide? We have to transition from the cultural habits to the much deeper and honestly much more complex realm of religion.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture of El-Feli's work, we hit the central revolutionary concept of the paper: post-secular feminism.
I feel like post-secular feminism is one of those terms that academics throw around at dinner parties to sound intimidating.
It definitely can sound like that.
Let's ground this. How does El-Feli actually unpack it in the context of these women's lives?
Well, for a very long time, typical academic frameworks operated on a strict assumption regarding female empowerment in the Middle East and North Africa.
Okay.
The prevailing thought was that religion, specifically Islam, was inherently fundamentally patriarchal. Therefore, the assumption was that feminism and empowerment only happen when women abandon religion.
The narrative was, to be liberated, you have to leave your faith at the door. You have to undergo secularization.
Exactly. Post-secular feminism argues the complete opposite.
Really?
Yes. It argues that for these Muslim women in the diaspora, they actually find a unique, profound agency through an adaptable, postmodern Islamic faith.
That is fascinating.
They negotiate their religious beliefs to coexist alongside Western secularism rather than letting one destroy the other.
They aren't throwing the religion away. They are remodeling the house from the inside.
I like that analogy.
And there's a brilliant physical metaphor for this in a place in the Old Village with the character Jamila.
Oh, yes. El-Feli specifically points out the contents of Jamila's handbag as the ultimate symbol of this synthesis.
It's so good.
Inside, Jamila carries a traditional religious talisman right next to her mobile phone and a tube of lipstick.
It's the sacred and the secular literally rubbing shoulders in her purse.
Exactly. But she takes it much further than just her accessories. She challenges strict patriarchal interpretations of religion when she decides to marry a Christian man.
Against her parents' wishes, which is a massive taboo.
And pay attention to how she justifies it. She doesn't reject Islam. She demands to know why a Muslim man is permitted to marry outside the faith, but a Muslim woman is forbidden from doing the same.
Oh.
Her exact quote in the book is, "I decide how to live my life."
She is claiming total agency by using the logic of the religion itself. She strips away the cultural patriarchy that men have layered on top of the faith, but she keeps her spiritual core intact.
She adapts it, yeah.
It's like, so religion here isn't a rigid cage, it's more like a flexible anchor.
A flexible anchor, yeah.
It keeps them grounded to their core identity no matter how far the transnational currents pull them. How does this flexible anchor directly challenge the conventional Western assumption that religion and female agency cannot coexist?
Well, sometimes those transnational currents pull them into incredibly dark, dangerous waters. This post-secular framework completely upends the Western stereotype of the oppressed, passive Muslim woman who needs to be saved by European secularism.
Right.
Because these characters are saving themselves, and their spiritual transmutations are heavily traumatizing. Take Sumaya and Kenza from Leaving Tangier.
Calling their journeys a straight line would be the understatement of the century. They go through massive spiritual transmutations.
They leave Morocco and are thrust into the harsh reality of survival in Spain. To survive economically, they engage in secular lifestyles that are deeply taboo in their home culture.
Kenza works dancing in a restaurant, performing for the male gaze.
And Sumaya actually ends up working in a brothel.
It's so dark.
They dive headfirst into the secular abyss. The psychological toll of survival sex work, combined with the alienation of being an immigrant, forces them to completely neglect their faith.
The paper even notes that they reach a point where they doubt the existence of God entirely. They are as far from their traditional spiritual roots as you can physically and psychologically get.
Right. And a traditional Western feminist reading might view their time in Spain as an awful but necessary breaking of their religious chains.
But the narrative doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't. After experiencing the absolute extremes of that secular freedom and the severe trauma that comes with their displacement, they eventually undertake a reversed journey.
They return to Morocco.
Yes.
And they return to their faith.
Yes.
This is where old-school Western feminism and post-secular feminism violently clash. Because the imagery Ben Jelloun uses for Sumaya's return is stunning.
It really is.
The paper quotes the narrator describing her coming off the boat wearing a traditional white hake covering her body. She's described as lost and found again.
Yeah.
Now, If I'm looking at this through a strict Western feminist lens, I might see her putting that covering back on as a tragedy.
Right.
I might see it as her regressing back into oppression after tasting freedom.
And El-Fili's paper exists largely to correct that specific misinterpretation. The post-secular feminist reading tells us that this return is not a regression. It is a conscious, deeply empowered choice.
Right.
Sumaya isn't being forced into that white hake by her father or a husband. She is choosing it for herself. She has seen the secular world, she has lived its absolute extremes, and she has made the autonomous decision to reclaim a moderate, adaptable Islam.
She went out in the world, gathered all the data, experienced the trauma, and realized that her true power and healing lay in a negotiated return to her spiritual roots.
Exactly. Her faith provides her peace from the wounds of the diaspora. El-Fili argues that this ability to acknowledge the secular world while consciously choosing to hold on to the sacred, that is the ultimate form of agency.
Okay, so what does this all mean? We've covered the geopolitical history, the dining room tables of cultural hybridity, and the deep psychological negotiations of post-secular feminism.
We've covered a lot of ground.
If we zoom out, the core takeaway from Tahar El-Fili's paper is that identity absolutely does not have to be a binary choice. You don't have to be just traditional or just modern.
Which is precisely why El-Fili concludes her paper by proposing the creation of a whole new sub-discipline in academia: Moroccan diaspora feminist studies.
Wow, an entirely new field.
Yeah. The current frameworks just don't capture this nuance. This new field would explicitly recognize that for these women, true authority and agency come from turning differences into similarities.
You don't need a complete uncritical return to your roots to be empowered. You just need critical awareness.
Exactly.
I think that is such a profound lesson, and it brings us all the way back to you listening right now. Even if you aren't an expat crossing the Mediterranean to find work, even if you are just navigating different corporate cultures or managing the expectations of different family members or just trying to figure out who you are as you grow older.
The underlying psychology is the same.
It is. We never have to chop ourselves into pieces to fit into a single predefined box.
We all have the agency to build our own third space, to carry the talisman and the lipstick, and to understand that one does not invalidate the other.
And that leaves us with a provocative thought I want you to carry with you long after this deep dive ends.
I love this part.
We've seen how Amina, Kenza, Jamila, and Sumaya found their ultimate power by refusing to purify their identities. So I have to ask you, what internal contradictions are you currently fighting in your own life?
It's a great question.
What parts of yourself are you trying to keep carefully separated because you've been told they can't coexist? And what would happen if, instead of trying to resolve your conflicting sides, you just let them deliberately, beautifully collide?